What's up guys, if you clicked on this video then you wanted to see what is the best double crossbow build currently in Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. As a quick disclaimer right off the bat, I just want to go ahead and admit that this build is pretty mid. There's 100% way better things that you can be using in this game. However, I will say that it's fun and interesting, and it gave me a perfect opportunity to test some of the newer weapons and talismans that were introduced in the DLC. With that being said, I would like to go ahead and state that the repeater bow, which was the one that was highly advertised when the DLC was first released, is still a pretty decent bow. However, in my experience between the ammo economy and the reload time, and also the fact that you can't dual wield them, the pulley bow from the base game still seems to be the best option in this case. I would say that where this build is most viable is probably like a new game plus run in the beginning when you're fighting some of the earlier enemies and bosses. But without any further delay, let's just go on ahead and get right into what you need to equip to make this build a somewhat viable option. The first thing you want to have equipped obviously are 2 pulley crossbows. Upgrade them as high as you can. Also, you probably want to have some kind of a seal equipped so that you can activate your Flame Grant Me Strength and Golden Vow buffs. Being that this weapon actually doesn't do all that much damage, I would highly recommend having something here to increase your damage, being these buffs in that case. The bolts that I use for these 2 crossbows are the bird bolts, and the reason being is A, they cause blood loss buildup, and this build is going to be using a lot of blood loss effects, but also because you can purchase this bolt from the nomadic merchant that is inside the Mogwin Palace, which is also close to a farm spot, so you can literally just go farm for a minute and then purchase an unlimited amount of arrows if need be. I chose the Gaius helmet and the Gaius chest piece because I wanted something a bit more tanky, being that you're probably going to be taking a few more hits with this build, primarily because you also have to reload the weapons. For the arms and the leg piece, you want to have the Rakshasa pieces equipped, as it will increase the damage that you deal to foes. For talismans, we're going to start with one that dropped with the DLC, being the Arrow Soaring Sting Talisman. What this does is it increases the effective range of bows and raises the attack power of both arrows and bolts. The next talisman you want is the Rotten Wing Sword Insignia, as this will greatly raise attack power with successive attacks. In the next slot, you want the Millicent's Prosthesis, as not only does it boost dexterity, but it also raises attack power with successive attacks, stacking on top of the Rotten Wing Sword Insignia. And lastly, we have the Lord of Blood's Exaltation Talisman, as this will increase any damage when there is blood loss in the area. And like I said, the biggest crutch of this build is the blood loss. I also recommend pumping some points into Arcane, as once again, you want blood loss to proc as much as possible, because that's really what's going to be doing the most damage with these 2 crossbows. For the Flask of Wondrous Physic, you're going to want the Thorny Crack tier, as it temporarily boosts successive attack power, and the Blood Sucking Crack tier, which temporarily increases attack power but slowly drains away your HP. My biggest advice with this build is, at any opportunity you can, try to let off as much damage as you can from range, because once the enemies close in on you, obviously it's going to be kind of hard to not only mix the regular gameplay of Elden Ring, but also to include the reloads of both the crossbows. I will say that once again, as far as the crossbows go, the pulley crossbow is one of the better options in this case, because the reload is pretty quick compared to the repeater crossbow, which actually takes a while to get your bolts notched in there. One thing that has to be said about this build is that you're probably going to want a mimic tier or some kind of a summon in order to take the aggro away from most of the bosses. I highly recommend the mimic tier, and I know that it's a meme, but having 4 crossbows against an enemy is actually a pretty fun and interesting thing to watch. And I also want to state one more time before I let the gameplay do the talking that I know that this build is not meta defining by any stretch of the imagination. It's something that's fun and interesting, and builds like this gave me the opportunity to test new things in the DLC, so if it's something that you want to check out for yourself, by all means. At this point, I'm just going to let the gameplay do the talking. Like I said, there's definitely better options out there if you're trying to just muscle your way through the game. However, if there are other ways to make this build more optimized, please let me know in the comments. And with that, thank you so much for watching.